There comes a moment when the life you worked so hard to build begins to feel strangely unfamiliar. The goals that once motivated you lose their power. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method. 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. The routines that once gave you stability begin to feel restrictive. Even the identity you proudly carried may suddenly seem like a role you have outgrown. From the outside, nothing may appear dramatically wrong, yet inside, something essential is shifting. You may call it confusion, failure, or a loss of direction. But from a Jungian perspective, this crisis may be the first sign that a deeper and more authentic version of you is preparing to emerge. Carl Jung believed that human development does not follow a simple, predictable timeline. Some people discover their direction early, while others spend years collecting experiences, facing disappointments, and building identities that eventually become too narrow for their souls. A late bloomer is not someone who failed to grow on time. It is someone whose transformation required deeper roots. Long before anything becomes visible, an invisible process is unfolding beneath the surface, rearranging values, questioning old loyalties, and preparing the personality for a life that could not have been lived earlier. Yet this transformation rarely begins with confidence or clarity. It often arrives as a crisis. What once worked stops working, but what comes next has not yet taken shape. You stand between two versions of yourself, the familiar person you can no longer remain, and the unknown person you have not yet learned to become. This uncertain space can feel empty, but it is not meaningless. It is where the persona begins to weaken, the shadow demands recognition, and the deeper self quietly calls you toward individuation, the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole. So if your progress feels delayed, do not immediately assume that life has passed you by. The pressure, restlessness, and uncertainty you're experiencing may not be proof that your story is ending. They may be evidence that an old chapter can no longer contain you. The crisis appearing before your late bloom is not necessarily here to destroy your future. It may be here to separate you from everything false, inherited, or exhausted, so that the life waiting beneath the surface can finally begin. 1. The life that once fit you begins to feel too small. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method. 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. There was a time when the life you created seemed completely right for you. Its routines offered stability, its goals gave you direction, and its familiar expectations made the future appear understandable. You knew what you were supposed to pursue, how you were expected to behave, and which achievements would prove that you were progressing. But gradually, almost without warning, this carefully constructed existence begins to feel restrictive. Nothing may have visibly changed, yet you can no longer inhabit your old life with the same certainty. At first, you may interpret this discomfort as ingratitude. You remind yourself of everything you have accomplished and compare your circumstances with those of people who appear to have less. You try to revive your enthusiasm by becoming more productive, setting new goals, or filling every quiet moment with activity. But the restlessness remains because the problem is not necessarily that your life lacks value. The deeper problem is that the person who originally built it is no longer the person trying to live inside it. From a Jungian perspective, much of our early identity is organized around adaptation. We learn what earns approval, what keeps us safe, and which qualities make us acceptable to the people around us. These lessons gradually form the persona, the social identity we present to the world. The persona is not inherently false or harmful. It allows us to participate in society, fulfill responsibilities, and form relationships. The difficulty begins when we mistake this useful mask for the totality of who we are. For years, the persona may function so successfully that you never feel the need to question it. You may become known as the dependable one, the achiever, the caretaker, the quiet one, or the person who never causes problems. Every compliment strengthens the role, and every reward encourages you to repeat it. Eventually, however, the qualities excluded from that identity begin demanding recognition. The personality becomes larger than the role it was trained to perform, and what once felt like protection begins to feel like confinement. This is why familiar achievements can suddenly lose their emotional power. You may reach a goal you pursued for years and feel surprisingly little when it finally becomes yours. You may continue doing everything correctly while privately wondering why none of it feels meaningful anymore. This does not automatically mean that the achievement was worthless. It may mean that external success has completed its psychological purpose and can no longer answer the deeper questions now emerging from within you. The crisis intensifies because the old life still appears reasonable. Other people may not understand why you are dissatisfied, particularly if your circumstances look stable from the outside. They may encourage you to appreciate what you have, work harder, or return to the person you used to be. Their advice may be well-intended, but they cannot feel the inner expansion taking place. Only you can sense that returning to your former identity would require silencing something that has finally become impossible to ignore. During this period, even ordinary routines can take on a different emotional weight. Conversations feel repetitive, ambitions seem borrowed, and commitments once accepted without question begin to demand examination. You become more sensitive to where your energy goes and how often you abandon your own truth to preserve familiarity. This sensitivity is not necessarily weakness. It can be the psyche's way of revealing the difference between what genuinely nourishes you and what you continue merely because it is familiar. The temptation is to escape immediately, to abandon everything, reinvent yourself overnight, or chase any experience that feels different. But Jungian growth requires more than impulsive rebellion. The task is not to destroy your entire life simply because part of it has become too small. The wiser response is to observe carefully which roles have become lifeless, which responsibilities still express your values, which desires have you repeatedly dismissed. Honest attention turns vague dissatisfaction into meaningful psychological information. When the life that once fit you begins to feel too small, it does not necessarily mean you chose incorrectly. That life may have carried you exactly as far as it could. It gave you experiences, strengths, and lessons that will support the person now emerging. Your discomfort is not proof that you are broken or behind. It may be the pressure created when an older identity can no longer contain your expanding consciousness, and the first unmistakable sign that your late bloom has already begun. 2. Your old identity must weaken before the real self can emerge. The most unsettling part of transformation is not discovering who you are becoming. It is realizing that you can no longer remain who you have always been. The identity that once gave your life structure begins to lose its authority. Labels that previously felt certain now seem incomplete, and roles you performed naturally start requiring exhausting effort. You may try to preserve the person everyone recognizes, but something within you has already begun withdrawing its loyalty from that version of your life. An identity is formed through repetition. Every time you respond in an expected way, silence an inconvenient emotion, or choose acceptance over authenticity, you reinforce a particular image of yourself. Over time, this image becomes so familiar that it feels permanent. You stop saying, "This is how I learned to behave," and begin believing, "This is simply who I am." Yet many characteristics we consider essential may actually be adaptations created to meet the expectations of our environment. Jung's concept of the persona helps explain why losing an old identity can feel so frightening. The persona is the face we present to society, the organized version of ourselves that allows us to function in the external world. It tells other people what they can expect from us and provides a sense of social belonging. But when the persona becomes too rigid, it can suppress everything that does not match its image. The individual may appear successful and consistent while becoming increasingly disconnected from an inner life that refuses to disappear. This disconnection often reveals itself through emotional exhaustion. You may become tired of being agreeable, responsible, productive, or endlessly available. The qualities others admire in you begin to feel like obligations you are no longer permitted to question. Whenever you attempt to behave differently, guilt appears. It tells you that setting a boundary is selfish, changing direction is irresponsible, or disappointing someone means you have become a worse person. In reality, you may simply be discovering that your old role demanded too much self-abandonment. As the identity weakens, uncertainty enters the space it once controlled. You may no longer know how to describe yourself or what you truly want. Decisions that once seemed automatic become difficult because you are learning to distinguish personal desire from conditioned expectation. This period can feel like a loss of confidence, but it may actually represent the beginning of deeper honesty. The old answers are disappearing because they were created for a version of you that has reached its limit. The people around you may resist this change, even when they care about you. They became accustomed to the role you played in their lives, and your transformation alters the pattern that made their world predictable. When you begin expressing different needs, speaking more honestly, or refusing expectations you once accepted, some may say that you have changed. They are correct, but change is not automatically betrayal. Sometimes it is the natural consequence of finally recognizing where you have been betraying yourself. This does not mean that everything belonging to your former identity must be rejected. Individuation is not an act of erasing the past. It is a process of separating what is genuinely yours from what was adopted unconsciously. Your discipline, kindness, ambition, and loyalty may remain, but they can begin operating from conscious choice instead of fear. What disappears is not necessarily the quality itself, but the compulsion that once controlled it. The real self does not usually emerge through one dramatic revelation. It appears gradually through small moments of recognition. The boundary you finally express, the interest you stop dismissing, the truth you admit privately, or the choice you make without seeking universal approval. Each moment loosens the old identity and creates room for something more complete. The emerging person may initially feel unfamiliar, not because they are false, but because they have been neglected for so long. Your former identity brought you to this threshold, but it cannot take every step beyond it. Allowing it to weaken is not the same as losing everything valuable about yourself. It means releasing the belief that you must remain consistent with a past version of yourself forever. Before your late bloom becomes visible to the world, an invisible transformation must occur. The mask must become flexible, the forgotten parts must be welcomed, and the person you performed must finally make room for the person you are becoming. 3. Everything you suppressed returns to be understood. Transformation does not only reveal new possibilities, it also brings forgotten parts of the personality back into awareness. Emotions you dismissed, ambitions you abandoned, and qualities you learned to conceal may suddenly return with unexpected force. Their reappearance can feel inconvenient because they disturb the identity you worked so carefully to maintain. Yet these hidden elements do not return simply to create disorder. They return because your next stage of development requires something they have been carrying. Jung used the term shadow to describe the aspects of ourselves that the conscious personality refuses to recognize. The shadow can contain anger, envy, fear, pride, and impulses we consider unacceptable. But it can also contain courage, creativity, independence, sensitivity, and natural authority, qualities we may have suppressed because they threatened our belonging. In this sense, the shadow is not merely a collection of negative characteristics. It is also a hidden reservoir of unlived potential. The shadow begins forming whenever you receive the message that a particular part of you is unwelcome. Perhaps your curiosity was considered disruptive, your sensitivity was treated as weakness, or your confidence made others uncomfortable. To remain accepted, you learned to push these qualities outside your conscious identity. You did not eliminate them. You merely stopped admitting that they belonged to you. They continued developing beyond the boundaries of the person you believed yourself to be. For a long time, suppression may appear to work. You become skilled at avoiding certain feelings and presenting the version of yourself that receives the least resistance. But psychological energy cannot remain buried forever. It often returns through recurring emotional reactions, persistent dissatisfaction, meaningful dreams, or strong judgments about other people. What irritates or fascinates you intensely in someone else may sometimes reveal a quality you have refused to acknowledge within yourself. This is why projection plays such an important role in confronting the shadow. When a hidden quality is too uncomfortable to recognize internally, the mind may perceive it more clearly in others. You may condemn someone's confidence because you have forbidden yourself from being assertive, or idealize another person's freedom because you have never permitted yourself to choose independently. The external person may genuinely possess that quality, but the intensity of your reaction can offer information about your own unconscious life. The return of suppressed emotions can also expose needs that were never given a voice. Anger may reveal a boundary repeatedly crossed. Envy may point toward an unlived ambition. Sadness may show that something meaningful was neglected or lost, while restlessness may indicate that your current path no longer allows development. These emotions should not control every decision, but neither should they be rejected automatically. When examined thoughtfully, they can become messengers carrying information the conscious mind has avoided. Meeting the shadow requires honesty without self-condemnation. The purpose is not to excuse harmful behavior or act upon every impulse. It is to recognize what exists within you so that it no longer operates invisibly. A person who denies all anger may express it indirectly, while someone who acknowledges anger can learn to transform it into clear boundaries and courageous action. Conscious recognition creates choice. Continued denial allows hidden patterns to make decisions from behind the scenes. This inner work becomes especially important before a late bloom because hidden potential must be recovered before it can be expressed. The creative work you postponed, the opinion you never voiced, or the direction you were afraid to pursue may all be connected to qualities once pushed into the shadow. Reclaiming them does not mean becoming an entirely different person. It means expanding your identity until it can include more of the person who was always present beneath the surface. Everything you suppressed returns because wholeness demands inclusion. The crisis forces you to meet the qualities, emotions, and possibilities that your former identity could not accommodate. Some will need understanding, some will require responsible transformation, and others will become the strengths that guide your next chapter. Your late bloom begins not when you create a perfect new personality, but when you stop abandoning the hidden parts of yourself that have been waiting to participate in your life. 4. The empty season is quietly preparing your transformation. There are seasons when life seems to become unusually quiet. Opportunities slow down, familiar connections change, and the direction that once guided you disappears without immediately being replaced. You may continue fulfilling your responsibilities, yet feel as though you are moving through an invisible corridor between two lives. The past no longer feels like home, but the future has not revealed its shape. This empty season can seem like wasted time, even though important psychological work may already be unfolding beneath its silence. Modern life teaches us to interpret constant movement as progress. We are encouraged to measure development through visible achievements, deadlines, recognition, and results. When nothing obvious is happening, we assume we have stopped growing. But inner transformation follows a different rhythm. Like roots expanding beneath the soil before anything appears above ground, the psyche often develops in places that cannot yet be seen, measured, or explained to other people. From a Jungian perspective, this interval can be understood as a withdrawal of energy from an identity that has completed its purpose. Activities that once held your attention may lose their emotional charge because the psyche is redirecting energy inward. You may feel less interested in proving yourself, maintaining appearances, or chasing goals that once seemed urgent. This is not automatically laziness or defeat. It may be a sign that your inner world is reorganizing its priorities. The difficulty is that the mind wants immediate answers. It wants to know what comes next, how long uncertainty will last, and which decision will guarantee success. When those answers do not arrive, anxiety often fills the empty space. You may attempt to force a new identity simply to escape not knowing. But choosing too quickly can lead you into another life built from fear, pressure, and external expectation. The same materials from which the old confinement was constructed. Emptiness becomes meaningful when you stop treating it only as a problem to eliminate. Silence allows questions to arise that constant activity once kept hidden. What do you want when no one is watching? Which ambitions still feel alive when praise is removed? What parts of your routine express genuine values, and which exist only because you are afraid to disappoint others? These questions rarely produce instant answers, but they gradually separate authentic desire from social conditioning. This season also teaches you to encounter yourself without the protection of familiar roles. When achievements, approval, and predictable routines are temporarily less available, you are left with the person beneath them. That encounter can feel uncomfortable because it exposes how much identity depended upon external confirmation, yet it also offers freedom. If your worth is no longer determined entirely by what you produce or how others respond, a more stable foundation can begin to form within you. Patience during this interval does not mean remaining passive. It means choosing deliberate actions without demanding immediate certainty. You can observe recurring thoughts, record meaningful dreams, explore neglected interests, learn new skills, and create routines that support reflection. You can also speak with trusted people or qualified professionals when uncertainty becomes difficult to manage. The goal is not to remain trapped in contemplation, but to let understanding mature before making choices that will shape the next chapter. Gradually, patterns begin to appear. A subject repeatedly captures your attention. A forgotten ability starts asking for expression. Certain environments leave you feeling more awake, while others reveal how much energy you have been surrendering. None of these signals may seem dramatic on their own, but together they form an inner compass. Clarity often arrives this way, not as a sudden command, but as a series of quiet recognitions that become impossible to dismiss. The empty season is not proof that nothing is happening. It may be the protected space in which your future identity is gathering strength before becoming visible. What appears from the outside as delay may actually be preparation. What feels like silence may contain the first language of your transformation. Your late bloom does not begin only when the world can finally see the result. It begins here, in the unseen interval where you learn to trust the growth taking place beneath the surface. 5. Comparison makes you believe you have missed your moment. Comparison becomes especially painful when you are moving through an uncertain season. While your own progress remains invisible, everyone else seems to be advancing in public. You see people reaching milestones, receiving recognition, discovering their purpose, or building lives that appear complete. Their visible success becomes a mirror in which your unfinished life seems inadequate. Without realizing it, you begin treating another person's timeline as evidence that you have fallen behind. The mind rarely compares two lives fairly. It compares your private doubts with someone else's public achievements. You know every hesitation, disappointment, and detour in your own story, but you see only selected moments from theirs. You do not witness the uncertainty behind their decisions, the support they may have received, or the sacrifices their path required. Yet the comparison feels convincing because it replaces a complex reality with a simple and damaging conclusion. They succeeded on time while you did not. Society reinforces this belief by presenting life as a fixed sequence. By a certain age, you are expected to know who you are, what you want, and where you're going. Achievement is treated as proof of maturity, while uncertainty is mistaken for failure. But psychological development does not obey a universal schedule. A person can achieve early without understanding themselves, just as another can appear delayed, while developing the insight and resilience required for a more authentic future. From a Jungian perspective, individuation is deeply personal. It is not a competition to reach the self before someone else does. Each person must confront a different combination of inherited expectations, unconscious patterns, hidden strengths, and unresolved conflicts. What takes one person a few years may take another much longer, because the inner task is different. Comparing those processes is like comparing two journeys that do not share the same starting point, landscape, or destination. Comparison also tempts you to imitate outcomes without understanding their meaning. You may pursue a career because it brought someone else recognition, adopt a lifestyle because it looks impressive, or force yourself into goals that do not belong to your nature. Even if you succeed, the achievement may feel strangely empty because it answered another person's calling instead of your own. What appears to be progress can become another way of postponing the life that is genuinely yours. The fear of being late creates urgency, and urgency can make borrowed paths look attractive. You begin believing that any direction is better than uncertainty, but rushing into the wrong life does not recover lost time. It only creates another identity you may eventually need to outgrow. Sometimes the most courageous decision is to move more slowly, examine your motives, and refuse to build your future from panic. Deliberate progress may look modest, but it creates foundations that can endure. To loosen comparison's influence, you must change the question you are asking. Instead of wondering, "Why am I not where they are?" but ask, "What is my present life trying to teach me?" Instead of measuring yourself by someone else's results, examine whether your current choices are more conscious than they were yesterday. Real development may appear as a clearer boundary, a recovered interest, an honest decision, or the courage to stop pursuing something that never belonged to you. This does not mean ignoring other people's success or pretending that envy never appears. Their achievements can become useful information when approached consciously. Notice what specifically awakens your reaction. Is it their freedom, creativity, confidence, recognition, or sense of purpose? The emotion may be pointing toward an unlived quality within you. Once understood, comparison can stop being a verdict about your inadequacy and become a clue to what your own development is asking for. You have not missed your moment simply because your life is unfolding differently. Some transformations need time because they are not producing a temporary performance. They are creating a more integrated person. The years that seem delayed may be teaching you discernment, patience, and self-knowledge, qualities that early recognition could never guarantee. Your late bloom begins when you stop measuring your roots against someone else's flowers and start honoring the season in which your own life is growing. 6. The crisis is asking you to abandon a life that is not yours. A crisis often begins when the life you are living becomes impossible to reconcile with the person you are becoming. You may still possess the routines, responsibilities, and achievements that once defined success, yet they no longer create a sense of inner agreement. Something feels divided. One part of you continues performing the expected role, while another quietly asks how much longer you can remain loyal to a path that no longer feels like your own. Many of the goals we pursue do not originate entirely within us. They are inherited from family, culture, education, and the expectations of people whose approval once felt essential. We learn which careers are respectable, which ambitions deserve admiration, and what kind of life supposedly proves our worth. Because these instructions arrive early, we rarely question them. We simply begin constructing a future around values we may never have consciously chosen. This borrowed life can function successfully for years. You may work hard, fulfill expectations, and receive recognition for becoming exactly who others hoped you would be. Each achievement appears to confirm that you are moving in the right direction, but external reward cannot permanently silence internal contradiction. Eventually, the distance between the life being praised and the life your deeper nature desires becomes too large to ignore. From a Jungian perspective, the psyche continually pushes toward wholeness. It does not remain satisfied with a personality built entirely around social adaptation. When essential qualities and desires have been neglected, the unconscious begins disrupting the established order. Motivation disappears, old ambitions become hollow, and questions emerge where certainty once existed. What looks like a breakdown in direction may actually be the psyche refusing to continue supporting an identity that excludes too much of the self. The word abandon does not necessarily mean walking away from every responsibility or destroying everything you have built. Often, the first life you must abandon is an internal one. The belief that your worth depends upon meeting every expectation, the habit of asking permission to become yourself, or the assumption that changing direction makes your previous efforts meaningless. Inner separation usually comes before any responsible external change. To discover what belongs to you, observe what remains meaningful when recognition is removed. Would you still pursue this goal if no one admired it? Would you continue this path if it did not provide status? Does the choice make you feel more present and engaged, or does it merely protect you from criticism? These questions do not always produce comfortable answers, but they expose the difference between genuine commitment and unconscious obedience. Fear often appears the moment you recognize that your current life is partly borrowed. You may worry about disappointing people, losing stability, or discovering that your authentic direction offers no guarantees. The familiar path may feel safer, even when it has become emotionally empty. But staying only because change is uncertain can gradually deepen the division within you. Courage does not remove uncertainty. It allows you to take measured, responsible steps while uncertainty remains. These steps do not have to be dramatic. You might begin by protecting time for a neglected interest, learning a skill connected to a deeper calling, expressing an honest preference, or reconsidering commitments that consume your energy without supporting your values. Small changes create evidence that another way of living is possible. They allow the emerging identity to gain strength before it must carry the weight of larger decisions. The crisis is not asking you to reject everyone who influenced your life or to treat the past as a mistake. It is asking you to become conscious of what you are carrying and decide what deserves to continue. Some inherited values will remain because they genuinely belong to you. Others must be released because their purpose has ended. Your late bloom begins when you stop living as the answer to someone else's expectations and start becoming responsible for the life that can only be lived through you. 7. Your late bloom begins when you stop forcing the outcome. When uncertainty becomes uncomfortable, the natural impulse is to force an answer. You create strict deadlines for your transformation, search constantly for signs of progress, and demand that every decision reveal its final result immediately. You believe that if you work hard enough, plan carefully enough, or control every variable, you can escape the discomfort of not knowing. Yet the more tightly you try to control your becoming, the further you may move from the inner guidance trying to emerge. Forcing the outcome often begins with fear, the fear that time is disappearing, that other people are moving ahead, or that one wrong decision will permanently ruin your future. Under this pressure, action becomes disconnected from wisdom. You choose what promises the fastest result instead of what carries the deepest meaning. You pursue visible progress because it calms your anxiety, even when that progress leads you toward a life that does not truly belong to you. A late bloom cannot be manufactured through impatience. It develops through the gradual alignment of identity, values, and action. Before the external result appears, something internal must become ready to sustain it. Without that preparation, success may arrive before you possess the self-knowledge needed to understand it. What seems like delay may therefore be protecting you from building something impressive on a foundation that is still unstable or borrowed. Jungian psychology reminds us that consciousness is not the only force shaping our development. The unconscious communicates through emotions, dreams, recurring patterns, creative impulses, and meaningful reactions that cannot always be translated into immediate instructions. When you insist upon controlling every stage intellectually, you may overlook this quieter information. The rational mind wants a complete map, while the psyche often offers only the next honest step. Stopping the effort to force an outcome does not mean abandoning discipline or waiting passively for life to change. It means releasing the demand that every effort produce instant proof. You continue learning, creating, and fulfilling your responsibilities, but you stop measuring the value of each action solely by its visible reward. The process itself becomes part of the transformation because it develops qualities that no external achievement can provide. This shift requires you to replace control with participation. Control says that life must unfold according to your preferred schedule. Participation asks what the present moment requires from you and responds with attention. Perhaps today's task is not to discover your entire purpose, but to complete one piece of meaningful work. Perhaps it is to practice a neglected skill, have an honest conversation, establish a healthy boundary, or rest long enough to hear what constant pressure has been drowning out. Small aligned actions gradually create momentum. At first, they may seem insignificant compared with the dramatic breakthrough you imagined, yet every action taken from authenticity strengthens the emerging identity. You begin trusting yourself because your choices increasingly reflect what you actually value. Clarity grows through movement, but it is a different kind of movement, steady, conscious, and no longer driven entirely by fear. As you release forced expectations, you also become more capable of recognizing unexpected opportunities. A rigid plan notices only what matches its original destination, while an attentive mind can perceive paths it had never considered. Your late bloom may not resemble the success you once imagined. It may arrive through a new direction, a recovered ability, or a meaningful role that the former version of you would never have understood. The bloom begins when you stop demanding that your life prove itself before you are willing to trust it. You act without needing immediate applause, grow without announcing every change, and allow understanding to mature at its natural pace. By releasing the obsession with when everything will happen, you finally become available to what is already happening within you. The outcome may remain unseen for a time, but the person capable of receiving it is already being formed. 8. You were never behind. You were growing beneath the surface. Looking back, you may be tempted to judge the years when nothing seemed to happen. You remember the opportunities that disappeared, the plans that failed, and the periods when everyone else appeared to be moving forward while you remained uncertain. From the outside, these years may resemble delay, but inner development is rarely visible while it is taking place. What you interpreted as stagnation may have been a long preparation for a life you were not yet ready to understand. Not every form of growth produces immediate evidence. Some experiences develop patience, discernment, emotional depth, and self-awareness long before they create an observable result. These qualities are easy to underestimate because they cannot be displayed like a title, possession, or public achievement. Yet they may become the exact foundation your future requires. Without them, an earlier opportunity might have strengthened the false identity you were eventually meant to outgrow. The roots of a tree do not apologize because the branches have not yet appeared. They grow in darkness, creating the stability necessary to support everything that will later rise into the light. Your unseen seasons may have served a similar purpose. Every disappointment forced you to reconsider what truly mattered. Every wrong direction sharpened your ability to recognize what belonged to you. Every period of uncertainty weakened the belief that your value depended upon following a conventional timeline. From a Jungian perspective, the path toward individuation often includes detours because the conscious mind does not initially understand what the whole personality needs. You may consciously pursue recognition while the unconscious pushes you toward meaning. You may demand certainty while your deeper development requires exploration. The conflict between these forces can feel like failure, but it may actually be correcting a path built around expectations that were never completely yours. This does not mean that every painful experience was necessary or that hardship should be glorified. It means that what has already happened can be integrated rather than wasted. You cannot rewrite every chapter, but you can decide what those chapters will contribute to the person you are becoming. Regret can deepen awareness, disappointment can clarify values, and a delayed beginning can produce a more conscious relationship with success. Your late bloom becomes possible when you stop using the past as evidence against yourself. If you continually repeat that you should have begun earlier, known better, or progressed faster, you remain psychologically loyal to an imaginary timeline. That imagined life prevents you from fully entering the one available now. Acceptance does not declare that every past decision was perfect. It simply releases the demand that your history must have been different before your future is allowed to begin. As this acceptance grows, your previous experiences start connecting in unexpected ways. A skill that once seemed irrelevant finds a new purpose. A disappointment helps you recognize an opportunity you would previously have ignored. A period of isolation teaches you to trust your own judgment. What appeared to be a collection of unrelated delays begins forming a pattern. The life ahead is not emerging despite your history. In many ways, it is being built from everything your history taught you. Eventually, you understand that blooming late offers its own kind of strength. You approach opportunities with greater self-knowledge because you have already discovered the emptiness of pursuing approval alone. You are less easily seduced by appearances, less willing to abandon yourself for acceptance, and more capable of recognizing the difference between excitement and meaning. Your growth may have taken longer to become visible, but its roots now reach deeper than they once could. You were never required to become yourself according to someone else's schedule. The crisis that seemed to interrupt your life may have been the threshold between the identity you inherited and the person you consciously chose to become. Now the task is not to recover an imaginary lost timeline, but to step fully into the chapter opening before you. Your late bloom begins the moment you recognize that you were never standing still. You are becoming strong enough to live a life that is finally your own.